was canceled. So we decided to try to maximize the opportunity to incorporate some online learning for folks. And our series is called Building the Future We Want. Obviously, the goal is to help improve conversation around sustainability in the construction industry. We're all members of the community who are working to reduce carbon emissions in construction. We know that buildings can account for from 30 to 60% of emissions, both in operations over the lifetime of the building, as well as in embodied carbon emissions in construction. We're really excited to have Carrie Bell from Teton County Solid Waste and Toby Grohne, owner of TKG Construction, with us today. And I'm Lindsay Love.
I'm going to interrupt you just real quick to ask you to start recording.
I did, thanks.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm Lindsay Love with Love Shack Architecture. My partner, Lindsay Shack, is also here, and we may have some other Love Shack folks with us, although I didn't see any on there yet. We've got some other presenters here as well. Beyond Efficiency is here with us. Oh, there's Kluani. I see Kluani's with us. Kluani Gorsuch is a Love Shack member.
You guys are both showing as Lindsay Shack today.
Yeah, right. So we were hoping that Carrie Bell would sort of start out this conversation today, but since she's having trouble getting on, I think we may as well.
Now.
Oh, great.
Yep,
All
just
right.
turn on your gallery view. You'll see her. Let's go ahead and welcome Carrie and have her tell us a little bit about what she brought today. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Lindsay Love?
No, Carrie, I'm ready for you to just take it away.
All right, thank you. And sorry about my tech troubles. I guess that's just the name of the Zoom game. Let me see if I can share my screen successfully. Can I just confirm that that is shared appropriately?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. My name is Carrie Bell. I'm from Teton County Integrated Solid Waste and Recycling, or ISWR. I'm the Waste Diversion and Outreach Coordinator here, and our department manages both the Recycling Center and Trash Transfer Station.
Let me interrupt you for one moment. I'm sorry.
Of course.
I forgot to ask everyone, if you have any questions or comments, please just post them in the chat. And after Toby and Carrie are done speaking, we'd like to invite everyone to kind of a community discussion. So we'll go through everybody's questions and comments then.
Perfect.
That's all.
So first we're going to touch on diversion and our diversion rate. So here at ISWR, we calculate a yearly diversion rate, which basically is a comparison of how much waste is sent to the landfill compared to how much is reduced, reused, recycled, or composted. For the last 5 years, we've hovered around 30%. Some years are higher, some years are lower, based on several variables, and one of those variables is construction and demolition waste. Most communities don't include construction and demolition in their diversion rate. Most just compare regular municipal solid waste to diverted materials. But here, in an effort to be as transparent as possible, as well as recognizing how significant construction and demolition waste is to landfill-bound material, we include it. If we were to remove construction and demolition waste from our calculations, our diversion rate would be closer to 36 or 37%. All of Teton County's waste is sent to Bonneville County Landfill, and the Bonneville County Landfill recently had to, they had a specific construction and demolition pit. However, recently they had to close it. It was filled to capacity, and now all construction and demolition waste is sent to regular municipal solid waste cells at the landfill. Here, we've got some data on the waste stream specific to C&D. So the teal at the bottom are tonnages for construction and demolition waste that that are for that fiscal year. And by the way, our fiscal year ended, they end June 30th, so that's why we have 2020 data available. And the green bar represents all waste sent to the landfill. Clearly, there is a general upward trend of both solid waste and construction and demolition waste. Summer of 2019 was one of the biggest waste seasons we've seen in a long time. And we do think that the cause of that, or one of the causes of that, was construction and demolition. We know there were several projects that happened specifically that summer that were waiting to happen and did happen last summer. So, and clearly we can see that, there's a 2,000 ton increase from 2018 to 2019. It's a pretty significant increase there, but really in comparison to all years, it's just, it's going up for sure. But 2019 was a really big year. And clearly 2020 is obviously turning out to be quite significant as well. So we do require at the transfer station all construction and demolition to be sorted if possible. This increases diversion of reusable and recyclable materials and saves the customer money. We do have rules and policies in place for each material and its respective pile. Like for example, the wood pile, where we have by far the most questions. In that pile, we can only accept dimensional lumber, plywood, and OSB. Prior to last summer, we allowed dimensional lumber with paint and stain on it. However, we have decided to use dimensional lumber in our food waste composting, so we can no longer accept paint and stain in that bin, or excuse me, in that pile. So you can also see, metal and concrete with these three things sorted correctly, it can save the customer a significant amount of money and of course divert material from the landfill. However, we do understand that some demolition projects they can't be sorted. It's the nature of the beast. And so if you do have a demolition project that is sent to the landfill that's going on the trash floor, everything has to be cut down in under 3x3 sections, 3x3 or less. And I'll get to why in just a second, but if you do not cut down your materials, or if you have a load that clearly could have been sorted, the charge jumps up to $300 a ton as opposed to $124 a ton. That is in place to incentivize everyone to sort appropriately and maintain those length requirements. We are becoming more strict about this policy. And in fact, not all people are just charged a sort fee. If your load is clearly could have been sorted, it has happened that we've just turned people around and told them they have to sort it to increase that diversion. That is, of course, our goal. So this is a great example of why that 3x3 rule is in place. This is the side of a landfill-bound yellow iron truck, and a piece of wood longer than 3x3 was placed in it, and it tore a huge hole in it. And I actually just got this photo this morning. I haven't heard exactly what happened to this truck, if it's completely out of commission or how they're going to fix it. But this is just a great visual of what happens, why that policy is in place, because all that landfill-bound material has to be put into a semi-truck and hauled away. So the size requirements are there for a reason, so it can fit into the truck and hopefully not do any damage. And so Teton County currently has no policy in place requiring zero waste construction and demolition practices on construction sites, but we are, of course, we recommend it, and we are willing to link individuals up who do amazing work like TKG and also Habitat for Humanity. And we also are willing to give any advice that we can to assist with zero waste construction and demolition on site. We know it's a challenge for many reasons, but we're willing to help in any way we can because it is so significant to the waste stream. We do have a zero waste construction and demolition committee that has discussed at length countywide changes to make zero waste construction and demolition easier, but also looking at the road to zero waste timeline, which includes requiring construction sites to do zero waste construction and demolition. However, we are a ways off from that. We have a lot of work to do because we don't want to rip the rug out from anyone. We want everybody to be prepared to manage their site well and appropriately and give them enough time. And thank you very much. And I'll pass it off.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Let me try to do the same here. Are you guys getting my screen now? Okay. I expected Carrie to kind of fill us in on a lot of the details on their end of on the receiving end of this. And coming from the contractor's perspective, I also thought it appropriate for me to limit the discussion from the design side to some degree as well, and talk more about our more immediate, construction practices, site management practices. But I'll first just kind of highlight the way I broke this down into a few main categories for consideration, and then we'll stroll through there. First, as you guys know, and again, which is only can be limited to some degree, our level of participation on the design side. We'll get deeper into that, but obviously a lot of efficiency is driven from early on the project through the design process. The material handling and procurement piece is where us as contractors, we immediately impact these parts, as well as our waste disposal and recycling practices, and then on to reuse and repurpose, which is kind of the ultimate goal to prevent it ever even arriving in Carrie's loading dock. And then another piece that I chose to focus on, where we're seeing, I think I see maybe more opportunity than even on our immediate site practices, is using the opportunity to influence all our employees and our vendors and subcontractors' personal practices. I'll get into ways that we've realized that we can take that approach to try and encourage employees and subcontractors to engage with us in this, and hopefully take those practices home to their daily life, and not just to the construction site. Design efficiency. Some of us have been involved in the course just recently, so we've touched on a lot of this. It's a short group here today, so I won't spend too much time with it. But from our perspective, I try aggressively to get involved with the design team as early as we can, because I think there's a lot of the opportunity occurs before the construction actually starts. Can be quite difficult at the same time. We're driven by market expectations. People want creative design and interesting forms and whatnot, and it ties into this whole greater conversation we've been having with the Passive House seminar of late. But obviously some of the primary goals are pretty obvious. Smaller construction obviously generates less waste. That's pretty obvious, and it's a guiding principle of the whole Passive House thing to begin with. Geometry is also a big part. This complex construction that we see a lot of places, which can be difficult to challenge because people want creative design. They want things that are visually interesting, but really cut up complex intersections, complicated roof structures, these lead to a lot of waste in a lot of ways, both in the building performance, but also just in how us as builders bring them together. I can tell you from the field, bringing together really interesting cut up roof designs in particular, multi-form kind of design where you have multiple boxes, let's say, that are all connected. Every time we do that, in those connections, we tend to, it takes more material to bring those pieces together. You have more cutoff waste and what have you. So simplifying the geometry basically has a large impact on our efficiencies. And that also leads to form factor, which was it's a driving design element in the passive house design. What that means in short, you guys all, I think everybody here is aware of that, but it's minimizing the volume of shell to the square footage of usable floor area. So efficient design tries to limit the amount of shell structure per unit of livable floor. Obviously, again, just less is more. And then most importantly in this, from our perspective, is the teamwork piece. There's a lot of reasons why I try to advocate for owners and designers bringing the contractor on board early. This is another one of them. We have a lot of opportunity early on to see inefficiencies, whether they're structural complexities or volume questions, or a lot of these questions, when they come up later, the way I usually put it is I feel like the cake is often baked and it becomes somewhat irreversible in a sense. If nothing else, it's more the human element at this time. I realize that we lose a lot of opportunity to use the generic term value engineer a lot of these inefficiencies when you're too far down the road because of client fatigue. Often, once they've spent a year in design and pre-planning and waiting on permits and all the back and forth, no matter how deliberate they are, they often don't have any bandwidth left if we're brought to the game late and discover opportunity for change. They often don't have the desire for it anymore. Just tired of delays and want to get on and build a house, and understandably so. Again, early collaborative teamwork is one of our powerful tools. So that's what this slide's kind of representing here, is putting teams together, engaging subcontractors and vendors as early as possible in the planning process gives us a lot of power to influence these efficiencies early on before we've got salaries on site. Once we step beyond design, and into material planning and procurement, this is where we as contractors really can play a big role. This still affects design, and there's some higher level detail beyond the normal considerations. Obviously, Lindsay's, you guys are very well aware of all the kind of the customary dimensions that we can buy materials in and such, and we can strive to stay within those parameters, not design, wall assemblies that are 24 foot, 8 inches long and things like this. I find that to be quite difficult, and I'm sure you guys would agree, because you're starting with a floor plan and design to that. And then once you start pulling forms and realize once you shape out walls and pull out roof dimensions, you're like, oh man, my roof plane's 25 feet long. Well, you often don't want to undo $20,000 of design work to try and shake a foot off your roof planes. So I think that's a difficult goal, but that's kind of higher level planning. On our end, once we receive that, I think there's a lot of good strategy. This really speaks to contractors, and I don't think we have any today. But I'll share what we've uncovered that is really important for our end of controls. I like to enforce a purchase order process with our teams. And this means in our world, a little more strategic buying. I'll use the rough framing, for example. A lot of times it's much easier for a contractor or a project manager to just order a large volume of materials, get it on site. It can feel efficient, so to make sure you don't run short of materials, and because at the end of the day, labor is our most expensive asset. But if you develop a PO system, we found that not dumping the gross excess of material on site will limit overuse. It's funny, if you just have 3 pallets of 2x4 sitting on site, somehow they just manage to disappear. Whereas if you order, we'll often use a floor-by-floor PO system and then move to the roof and then decks, and find that if you order in that way, you produce less waste because guys are less likely to just go grab another board. They dig through their cutoffs and are a little more deliberate. It's also important in our world to understand your waste factors. It takes a lot of experience. I think this can also be a collaborative piece to give feedback, have a feedback loop with our architects. When you're young and you're contracting, it's often hard to know what your waste factors really are. And so you use like generic waste factors across the board, which can be grossly, in gross excess in some areas and insufficient in others. As you dial those numbers in, it allows you to order more closely and not end up with a bunch of leftovers at the end of a project. And then I think storage is another important piece. You just, if we can take better care of our materials, you lose less to environmental damage. We don't want things sitting in the rain. Also kind of gets back to that purchase order philosophy. If you're storing things until they're immediately needed, then it tends that the guys don't tend to go pull from the back stock and use them unnecessarily. This is just a slide that we had that shows like highly detailed takeoff practices. This is kind of an evolution of the practice, moving towards a digital world. We've made that transition over the last 5 years. It's an evolution for some, but moving towards really accurate digital tools and planning and management tools can help with our efficiencies a lot in the field. This is another slide that David gave me. This again gets down to our purchase order approach, where we're ordering, say, 1 floor at a time rather than just ordering 4 bunks of studs that guys are more likely to just pull away from. Our waste disposal and recycling is another big piece that gives us a lot of control. We're very deliberate about this, and this works hand in hand with Carrie's mission. I think this is where we can make a big difference. Sorry, I'm running short on power all of a sudden with all these devices. We are very deliberate to have a highly organized sorting system on site. This is very practically driven by Teton County. In a very positive way and also a painful way. It's the carrot and the stick for sure. So that's why I felt it appropriate to leave a lot of that to Carrie. But on our end, what we found to be most efficient over the course of a job is to be very strategic about our separation and recycling tools on our end, because the sorting fees that Carrie shared earlier can be quite painful. They're a big stick here in the Valley. So we found that providing really good separation systems helps us to control those, not only to do a better job of sorting these things, it actually saves money at the end of the day. So what we've done is we'll use a variety of dumpsters or storage containers rather than having one and just stomaching the sorting fees. We've done that in a variety of ways. One is in roll-off dumpsters, but we've also tried to limit those because as we know in Teton Valley, those are fairly expensive services as well. So we've actually taken to using portable trailers of our own, wheeled trailers. And we also use, as you see in this slide, trash cans. A big part of what we've found important to try and accomplish with this is not only to accomplish the separation of waste, but also to try and influence thinking of everybody that we're working with. And so a part of that is we are real deliberate to try and separate our personal waste, largely food waste, from our construction trash. So that's what you see here with these trash containers. Even though well, actually those are some of our recycling bins that are shown here, but we found that technically those food wastes and such, all your plastic wrappers and McDonald's packages and whatever else could technically go in the trash dumpster. But if you do that, they tend to just kind of disappear from consciousness. They just get buried in a heap. Whereas if we separate that personal trash, we feel like it holds everybody a little bit more accountable. It's obvious how much personal waste they're developing on site. So we felt like this has been an important piece to make all of our employees and teammates a little more conscientious about their own buying practices. So we're kind of really putting a lot of effort into that piece, kind of outside of the construction process itself. This slide here shows this customization that I'd recommend any contractors. It's an inexpensive piece that's actually billable to the job that we found saves our clients money. But rather than resorting strictly to rental dumpsters, we've purchased a handful of dump trailers, and we had a welder weld sleeves into the sides of these so that we can separate. The way we've chosen to do it is we separate into 3 compartments, and these partitions are all removable. So if, sometimes you just have one big load of trash and you can put everything in one bin, but otherwise we'll keep these partitioned into 3. So it makes it really easy for our guys to separate on site. And then you can actually dump this way. So if you just plan strategically, you can leave the partitions in, you go dump the first section, you pull down the ramp, you can dump the second section and onward to the third. So it makes it quite efficient for us. And the guys can kind of take pride in it. I've actually found that employees now will, when we have to mention that we've gotten hit with sorting fees, they'll take offense to it. They've taken ownership of this, and it's done a really good job of getting them to participate, I think. So again, getting back to try and actually influence how they think, and hope that they take that home and not just use these practices here on site because we're whipping them to do so.
Toby?
Yes.
I'm just going to interrupt you again because I think your computer's still not charging.
Uh-oh. It was for a second, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give up my second screen, which will make me a little more a little handicapped, but give me 1 second. Sorry about this. For some reason today, my external monitor decided to quit working on me. So usually my computer's charging off that monitor. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So some of those tools that we highlighted there, these custom dumpsters, which I would recommend any contractors. We actually, like I said, they're entirely billable at a rate that actually saves money to our clients. I've found that we're comfortable. I basically create an amortization schedule for tools like this, and I find it easy to explain to the customer how we're billing it to them. So I assign a 5-year depreciation schedule to those trailers, and that allows us to bill them to the clients at just over $100 a month. So it actually is less expensive than a dumpster, and it gives us better control. But then I want to move on to those pieces and the personal patterns that we're trying to create or affect with those. This is again a part that my team has chosen to focus on, and a big part of this is sorry, I lost my screen, so let me catch up with myself. Local sourcing. We've already gotten past this. Sorry. Okay. So that's, again, the employee involvement's a big piece here that we talked about. And so that's why we're trying to utilize these tools and develop a program. And then we're actually kind of assigning this to the team. I find this to be a really good opportunity to particularly engage some lesser skilled employees, which is a great kind of business management opportunity. It's often easy to engage and challenge your managers, your kind of top tier employees, but I find it harder to kind of entitle your lesser skilled employees and make them feel some sense of ownership and higher involvement, in the program. And so we found this is a good piece to do that. It's not extremely highly skilled, doesn't take specialized skills. So we're trying to entitle kind of some of our middle range employees to be responsible for these programs. And it gives them kind of I think a cool sense of accomplishment that they've gravitated towards and kind of taken ownership of. And so I'd recommend that as well. It takes some leadership from above to shake out a program and provide the pieces, but then allowing them to actually run them. One, it takes it off management's plate, and two, it gives them a kind of a gratifying sense of responsibility. So, oh, sorry guys, because I lost my screen, I lost my script. Let me see what I can do here. Well, let me get back to something here for you. We touched on the actual physical tools that we're giving to our employees, the separate recycling bins, and the personal trash management containers are a big part of that. We've also used a lot of the reuse and repurposing channels around here quite a bit, quite successfully. You guys are all familiar with Restore and Habitat for Humanity. It's a great resource. If you're proactive with them, they'll often even come to you and take things off site, so they can, in theory, save some money to the client as well by even doing some of the legwork. Takes a little planning because they need some lead time. They need to come kind of appraise what you have. 10 years ago, you could basically dump anything you had in their backyard and they would take the majority of it. They're forced to be much more selective now. And so it takes a little bit of planning, but we've still found it to be super effective. We also use Facebook Classifieds and Misty's List with great success. Misty's List is actually rather new to me, but we've used it quite a bit this building season, and I've been stunned at the response that you can get to give away nearly everything. We've just demoed a couple major buildings, and I wished that we tried to get kind of a documentation trail in place before we started. We couldn't quite get there, but we were really surprised at how much we were able to divert from the the landfill by using Misty's list, down to stacks of 2x cutoffs and things. It's amazing what people will come take for free. So I highly recommend Misty's list. I was shocked at how responsive people are and how quickly we got rid of a lot of reusable materials that otherwise would have gone to the landfill and probably couldn't have been, or a lot of it couldn't have been recycled. The personal practice piece is a big one that I was talking about. Sorry, you're having to see my script, but I lost my second screen, so I can't see both at the same time. Again, the employee involvement is a big one. We're calling it recruit through collaboration. We're just really trying to make these things team efforts, and then actually assign them down the row a little bit so that they can take ownership of those and be proud to kind of feel like they have ownership of a part of our processes. Another piece that I've really personally taken on, and another one of my superintendents that joined rather recently is joined me in this, is we've tried to really influence the employees' personal waste practices and kind of their buying practices. It absolutely drives me mad to see guys show up with a case of 24 disposable water bottles on Monday for their work week. And so we've invested in them proactively by supplying personal tools, we'll call it, durable goods, to replace all their disposable stuff. And we've found this is another good tool to kind of make them feel invested. So we've, actually spent a little more than we had to, but to buy high quality personal water coolers, and then large team coolers that everybody can fill off of, but then actually, branded high quality individual water coolers, particularly in light of our new COVID reality, so that these guys can quit, can end those habits of running to the gas station and buying cases of plastic bottles that they throw away every week. And we're actually moving towards personal, like coolers, lunchbox things as a next step as well. And, kind of recommended as a great branding opportunity too, because then you've got 20 employees out there running around flashing your brand on high quality materials. So it's hopefully there's some return on investment down the road, but at the least it really creates kind of pride with the employees. So I think it's got a positive influence that they'll hopefully take home with them. We feel the same way about our digital workflow and our movements towards limiting paper. We've made that transition over the last 5 to 10 years by nature of competition. We use a lot of packaged software systems, project management, digital takeoff softwares and such that help us eliminate a lot of paperwork. There's legal boundaries to that sometimes, or bank pushbacks and things like this that can kind of hinder our goals sometimes. But, pay apps, for example, create enormous piles of paper, particularly if they have to go to, let's say they have to go to a bank, they have to go to an owner's rep and then go to a client. We might print 1,000 pages of paper at the end of a busy month. So we've tried to move all that to a digital platform, and we quickly find that there's less resistance to that even among banks, as long as it's well organized and comes through a professional delivery system, so that we've largely quit printing pay apps and backup at all. So that's greatly limiting our paper stream, as well as our printing costs. I've had projects where blueprinting costs ran north of $5,000. So if you can move your digital management practices or your practices to the digital side, from takeoff and project management tools, those offsetting blueprinting costs can pay for laptops really quickly. So that's been our workflow. Guys seem to like it. The industry's going that way. So we've taken the step of covering those costs for our employees to try and move things in that direction. And I think it's a place where we can make a big difference pretty quickly. So I think that brings me through my slides that I tried to follow a different tack that I expected Carrie to. So again, kind of to the more personal practice side, a little bit beyond just how we manage our materials on site, because Carrie in Teton County does a damn good job of running a really strict ship over there anyway. So it's kind of baked into the cake here to some degree, but that's why we're kind of adding a layer to this and trying to use those job site practices to hope to influence our employees in their more daily life. So I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you, Toby. Thanks, Carrie. We do have a number of questions that have come in. Let's see. So Toby asked Carrie, I would like to hear more about the decision to refuse painted and stained wood material. And then along those lines, also Mac Ducart, one of our previous presenters, asked, you mentioned the food waste composting program. Carrie, do you mind speaking a little bit about those two things?
Of course, yes. So currently, so the wood pile was being chipped and sold as fuel to mostly to a company over in Idaho. So in that case, the stain and paint are fine. We don't have any issue with paint and stain in that product when it's being sold as fuel. However, with our food composting coming online this fall, fingers crossed, we've had to push pause on it several times because of our current situation. We need more brown material to mix in with food waste. So our contractor out there, Terra Firma, has looked at our wood pile, and if we can clean it up to food waste standards, which basically means removing paint and stain, then we can use that to assist with composting. Does that answer your question, Toby?
It does. I just, from our perspective, I found it interesting in that I feel like we're having to dispose of quite a bit more wood waste in the regular trash because now we can't dispose of, well, anything with paint and stain, as you already pointed out, but also any of our particle boards with glues in them, and any hard face, any faced material and stuff that has anything other than raw wood laminated to it. So yeah, I guess on the other side of it, it feels like it increased our wood waste quite a bit.
Absolutely, and I think this is a good conversation for us to have with our contractor about what is the potential for. I mean, I don't know if this is crazy, but having two piles, still having a shipping sold as fuel pile and a pile that, is used for food waste composting. I think it's a good question for me to ask. I know a lot of it down there depends on space. I know you all know we're very limited on space, staff time, et cetera, et cetera. So I wonder if that has something to do with it too. But I think that's a really good point, Toby, that we might see, we are going to see more sent to landfill because of that. I mean, I can't imagine the percentage of wood waste that has paint and stain on it probably is, I don't know, do you think it's greater than wood waste without?
In the context of remodels, it might be, because there's, everything from paints and stains or sprayed in insulation or waterproofing, like roll-on waterproofing elements, any materials we take out now that has any of that applied to it, we now have to throw in the trash. And so I've been really aware of that, because I also have a tendency to think that the woods industry is migrating more and more towards engineered materials by necessity, because, you know, the forestry industry is running out of materials. So it's going to move more towards recycled materials, hopefully, which means chipboard and such. So it kind of feels like a shame to be throwing it in the trash.
I agree. Yes, I'm gonna stir up that conversation with our contractor and just see, you know, see what is hindering us from potentially still chipping and selling for fuel, which of course, you know, waste energy is not necessarily the ideal, but it's definitely better than going to the landfill. So I think it's a good question to ask, and I'll follow up with you, Toby, once I talk to him.
Great. Okay.
Let's see. I asked to Carrie, could you tell us what the tonnage looks like in terms of numbers of trucks and sizes, and how often they have to transfer?
Yes, so I can speak to some of that off the top of my head. On average, we send about 6 semi-trucks to Bonneville County Landfill every day, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And on, you know, I'd say in the summer, it's probably closer to 6 or 7. In the winter, it's probably, you know, probably in the 4 range. So it averages out to about 6 trucks a week. I can't speak to the tonnage, unfortunately, off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But they are, you know, they're your average size semi-truck, and they pack them as full as they possibly can.
And the Bonneville landfill is where?
So that, it's 100 miles away. It's just outside of Idaho Falls. I don't know if you guys ever drive to Idaho Falls and you see the big wind turbines. It's up on that hill.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of trash.
It's a lot of trash. And it's, I mean, even when you're considering, you know, I mean, when you look at the amount of trucks, the emissions spent, you know, driving, it's 100 miles one way, you know, it adds up. It's very significant.
Expensive. And the construction, you said, was how much % of that? You could show that slide again.
Yeah, so in 2020, I don't feel like that graph really represented, you know, compared it as well as I would have liked, but in 2020, we're almost at 25% of waste into landfill was construction and demolition waste. Almost.
So that's about almost 2 semi-trucks per day during the summer.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see. Oh, I also asked, what is your salvage policy?
Oh, yes, good question. So it depends. I hate to say that. We are working on a salvaging permit because, you know, fundamentally at our core, we want people to reuse, and we want to give people the kind of access to reuse these materials. I'm sure most of you have seen the amazing, basically new material that comes through the transfer station on a daily basis. We want to give that opportunity. However, because we are a part of Teton County, there's, you know, all the liability, et cetera, that comes along with it. So prior to about now, we have just said no, that we can't take the chance of somebody getting hurt. However, we are looking at ways to allow that, you know, maybe with a permit, and just looking at ways to keep everybody safe, but keeping as much out of the landfill as possible, for sure. So to be determined.
Yeah. I know that here in Teton County, Idaho, there is a permit option. You can pay $15 and probably sign a waiver and get a permit. But then there's only certain days that it's available.
Yes. It probably will look something like that along those lines.
Sure. Lindsay Shack asked to Toby, and I think you kind of already answered some of this already, Toby, but the question is, any specific talking points you use with your teams and subs I think the subs question is particularly important. Michael Best actually asked the same question. How do you work with electricians, plumbers, and other subs to buy into the waste stream? And then Lindsay Shack also asked, do your clients appreciate these practices?
Yeah, I think on the employee and partner side, obviously there's different degrees of difficulty there. With the employees, it's easier to have influence. We're fairly deliberate about our team collaboration, and so it's something we've taken as a topic in some of our meetings. And it's been really interesting to see if you take advantage of the opportunity to empower particularly maybe less entitled employees, you know, your average carpenter or your laborer. They really seem to latch at the opportunity to feel that entitlement maybe more than anything else. Maybe it has more to do with their, you know, affecting their personal values immediately as it does just giving them a sense of pride in what they're doing. And so I think, you know, the conversation starts as, you know, just like trying to draw a line in the sand, and not everybody's going to agree with your purpose, obviously. But I think if you can take advantage of that kind of human element of creating this opportunity for like kind of self-expression, self-entitlement, then they tend to grab onto it anyway. It's kind of funny timing because not a half an hour before this meeting, I got a phone call from a middle of the road carpenter that had heard that there was a sorting fee on his job last month. And, you know, he's not getting penalized or concerned that he's going to get in trouble about it, but he took enough offense to call and just want to know about it and whatnot because they've taken ownership of it. So that was interesting timing that that happened right before I walked into the meeting. So I think it's somewhat of an empowerment thing, and then hopefully it just grows on itself. And like it probably has on all of us, you know, who knows when you started, hopefully it was 10 or 20 years ago, but you know, you get tired of seeing Ziploc bags go in your garbage can. And so you find a substitute, and it's kind of like one little thing at a time that you know, this replacement plan kind of grows on itself. So, you know, that's what we're hoping to do with our employees. Subcontractors, it's a little more, the buy-in is maybe obviously a little more hit and miss. To be candid, we've become much more deliberate about this only over the last couple of years, where we're trying to really push it down the line through all our partners. So I'd say up until a year ago, even, we just took responsibility for it. We didn't so much put it back on the subs, but when they created waste, we took responsibility for sorting it. So it wasn't forcing much buy-in on their part. Now we're trying to engage them more. And I think we're fortunate to have like a lot of long-term relationships because we've been in this market for a long time. And so buy-in so far with, I think, some of our most important subs hasn't been too difficult. We're still deeply involved and we take on some of that labor and cost, but we don't get much, we haven't found much pushback yet. And I think to the client side, I guess, I don't know if I can answer that yet. I don't know that this is kind of a next step for us, I think, is to try to figure out how to kind of chronicle and showcase some of these things in our jobs. Because a lot of it goes unseen, you know, like people don't really know it's happening, whether it's the client or your subcontractor or whoever it might be. So that is something we're trying to figure out how to do, is actually be deliberate to kind of showcase it a little bit. And some ways it comes to like tooting your own horn and telling a client what you've done on the job, which can be a strange thing sometimes, I think. It can feel like boasting or bragging about how you do business, but So it's something we're working on now to kind of make a point of what we're doing a little bit and help everybody to see it. So I'll get back to you when we start getting feedback from clients.
Well, and Toby, if I could just add to that, it seems to me like I know when we're interviewing contractors for a particular project, the clients are always asking us for ways to differentiate between good options. You know, we're always bringing good options to the table for them to consider. And sometimes a client, you know, needs some support in figuring out what the priorities are or how to balance one contractor against another to make a choice. And it seems to me like them understanding that a contractor has a particular method for managing waste like this would be really valuable. And actually they would probably say, yeah, that actually matters to me. I want to think about where the construction waste for my project goes to, and that there's somebody thinking about it and it's not just being discarded.
For sure. Yeah, it'd be fun to strategize. Again, it's back to the kind of the sales piece.
I'm kind of curious to know a little bit more deeply, like, how do you get your employees to engage with that? What exactly do you do? Do you have a competition? Do you just talk about it regularly?
I think we're fortunate to have enough buy-in in the sense that we have, I think we have some good leaders that are liked by the teammates, and they happen to be the ones that are also like have these same values. So they've done a good job of just being kind of good passive influence. It's not so much, utilizing the whip. It's
like leading by example, like they're just doing it.
So. And then we've also invested money to kind of kick this off, like the example of using the customized dump trailers that we own on all our sites. There's an upfront cost on those that you have to accept as a contractor, but if there's only a 4 or 5 year payback period on that, I find that to be money well spent. And I've never had any pushback on that. I think we've proven it does actually save money to the client versus some of the sorting fees that we've dealt with at times. We've had they can be quite painful. So they're significant, they're real costs. So if you can explain that to the client and to the employees, they take it seriously pretty quickly. I mean, we had a sorting fee last year on a job. It was a remodel. So again, it's much more complex in heavy remodels sometimes, because you'll get materials that can be put into the right container, but if they've got a finish applied to them or a waterproofing, then they can't. Actually, it can be hard to even know where they go, where they need to go. So I know we had one last year where it was, I think, nearly an $8,000 sorting fee on a 30-yard dumpster because the employees thought they were doing the right thing, and they had, I believe it was concrete waste that had waterproofing applied to it. I can't remember exactly at the end of the day, we were, concrete is more expensive, obviously, because it's extremely heavy. And then the sort fees are, about 400% marginal fee to the regular waste fee. So anyway, like if you, the client and your employees experience those once or twice, it doesn't take long to realize there's real costs that you're talking about. So managing it from the front end really makes sense, even just from a financial standpoint. So if you have to make them known, though, I think is a piece that needs to happen. A lot of times this kind of information gets shared among management and doesn't make it through the chain. So I think that's an important piece for, as a builder, to make sure all the, employees from top to bottom understand the reasons behind all this, and doesn't just come as a reprimand, but they understand that these are real costs that we have to control. So I think that's real non-confrontational way to approach it and engage them in the whole thing. You can, if you need to, you can reduce it simply to money, and it's expensive enough to be effective. We've also elected to spend a fair bit of money on the personal side of these things. This gets to sales and branding a little bit, and it's funny how these things intermesh a lot of times, but we've decided to buy high quality kind of durable goods, as we're calling it, for our employees to get buy-in for them to agree to not use, disposable water bottles and, disposable lunch bags and this sort of stuff. I think, we found that if you go a little bit over the top and provide high quality products, then they take pride in it. They're actually proud to carry around their $50 Yeti water bottle that coincidentally has your brand on it, and is hopefully showcasing the brand at the same time. So again, there's a little front cost that we have to decide to spend to hopefully influence their behaviors. So that's kind of something that we've elected to do, and I've just decided to throw a little money at it, and hopefully it pays spades down the road.
Awesome. Lizette Fife has a comment that I don't really know how to answer it. It seems like everybody should just keep their own waste. I mean, that is, in an ideal world, probably the way it would be. I personally think that landfills were one of the worst inventions of humans, but
well, I live in Idaho Falls, and I was rather shocked that you guys are shipping all your waste down here.
Yeah, you should be.
Lizette, I wonder if this is helpful, but we don't have an active landfill here. So Idaho Falls the Bonneville County landfill is slightly further away than, say, Sublet, where we have sent waste in the past. However, the Bonneville County landfill is better managed. So we have opted to go there. I don't know if that is helpful.
Yeah, let me unmute me. Okay, am I unmuted? Yeah, I just feel like, I don't know how to say this respectfully. It seems like everything's kind of hand and nice up that way, yet you don't want your trash or shipping it down here. So it seems like you need to provide a place for everyone that lives in your area doing construction, demolition, to take care of it.
Again, I would just say that's an ideal world. I don't think I'm sure you could look at Idaho Falls and pick out things that they're doing that have effects on other communities. Like we all have our impacts on everyone that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
No, I know. We used to live up in Moscow, and we've been ingrained in all this stuff. And so, yeah.
And I think, Carrie, I'd maybe elaborate, correct me if I'm wrong. I think, because I didn't really think about the difference until a number of years ago, like the difference between a transfer station and a landfill. Jackson, I think, doesn't have the space to operate a landfill that can service this town. And so it functions as a transfer station, which means it's going somewhere else. And at the end of the day, I think it's a service, it's a business. So Bonneville County isn't taking that by default. They're running a business. It could have just as well probably gone to Casper or somewhere else, and Bonneville is probably the winning bidder. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Carrie.
Exactly. Yes. We pay for all waste going to the Bonneville County landfill. Just as we would for, anywhere, Sublet, Casper, wherever it would go, Mud Lake on occasion. So it is a business tactic, and on their end, of course, all waste streams technically are, we have an old landfill that was closed back in the 90s, that we've done a remediation project on for the last 10 years. It's finally complete. But yes, I mean, as we all know, there's no land doesn't come cheap here in Teton County, and putting in a landfill, it doesn't make any sense financially, or even just finding the appropriate location here is just not feasible. And so that's why we have looked at shipping it out, which, you know, Lizette, I agree. I mean, I wish, of course, you know, deep down in my heart, we just didn't have, I think all of us didn't have this problem, or this issue of managing waste, that there could be a way to eliminate it completely. You know, I think at least as far as construction and demolition, you know, what Toby and TKG is doing, I mean, this is the way to really curb a huge amount of this waste. So thank you, Toby, for spearheading that. Yes.
That brings up a question, because to me, it sounds like you're wanting clean materials so that you can put in places. But as Toby mentioned, if you're putting waterproofing on concrete, all of a sudden it becomes not clean. So I wonder, as designers, are there different products that are better to take apart so we can keep the clean materials separated? So when I'm picking, I want to waterproof, do I want peel and stick on the outside of my foundation, or do I want to use the liquid, you know, waterproofing?
That brings up a good point that maybe I can speak to a little bit. And I just want to mention right now that it is 1:10. I think we could continue for another like 5 minutes, but we should probably sign off pretty soon. So there are limits to the products that are out there. A lot of the, say, waterproofing materials that we use, and frankly, we coat almost everything with some kind of waterproofing, and that is essentially a plastic, which does not biodegrade. It can't go into compost. That's on our flooring, it's on our walls, it's our roofs, it's the interiors and the exteriors. And so the more that we can use biodegradable materials, the better. They come with a cost. They are not the cheapest thing all the time. There are a few out there that are. There's a whole nother conversation about toxicity of these chemicals and these materials that maybe we'll have another webinar about that at another time. That doesn't even address like the biodegradable ability for something to be composted. But at Love Shack, I can say that we do as often as we can, as often as our clients are interested, we try to use materials that are biodegradable. I think we've found ways to get away with that on most of our finishes on the interiors, using sort of like a beeswax citrus, probably forgetting all the words right now, but like more biodegradable, naturally made finishes for interiors, and then plasters on walls. We try not to use spray foam. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but it's essentially plastic, a lot of plastic, and it has very, very high embodied energy. So using materials like fiberglass and cellulose or straw, or wood fiber. There are really amazing new wood fiber insulations out there. And we'll get into this more in our next one. But yeah, it's hard. There's costs associated with them because these materials are not what you find at Home Depot. They're not mainstream all the time. But the more we can do that, the better for everybody. I like to think that maybe someday we could be building out of everything, all the things that could just go back into the garden, essentially. The whole building could just go into the garden when it's done. That's idealistic, but.
Cradle to cradle.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's any more questions from anybody, but thank you all for joining again, and looking forward to one more next week. Thanks, Toby and Carrie. You did an awesome job Toby, you're doing a lot with your company to divert and improve the way things could be done. So thanks for your effort.
We'll
I'm super
try.
impressed.
We'll keep, we'll follow up with that meeting on how to sell it.
Cool. Yeah. Good. All right. Well, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.